So with the two collectible categories inside the app, there's always going to be questions of what should I invest in? What should I buy? I believe first and foremost, again to my last point, is always buy what you like. And if you are going to be doing it for money, I'm going to try to break it down in this video so you kind of have a good understanding of how I see it. Keep in mind the cool part is we are going to be getting different categories down the road as well. The team has already mentioned we might be getting categories such as movie clips or sports or anything like that. And these are going to be huge when they hit the app. So if you're just starting out in the app, I highly recommend participating in comic book drops. And the reason for this is a comic book is only $7. And these comic book drops happen every Tuesday and Thursdays, with the exception of this week and some other weeks where they drop on a Wednesday due to a particular event. And the reason why I recommend everyone participate in this is because it's $7. And although I don't want to play off $7 and how much that is potentially to some people, $7 for a comic book is relatively cheap for everything else that's in the app. This $7 could yield you a really good return depending on what rarity you land. And even with comic books, if you had started when Marvel comic book number 1 came out, you paid $7 for that. They were reselling in the marketplace for $2 to $3 at some points, and just tonight I saw the comic book hit $300 for the floor on the common Marvel number 1 for a $7 comic for $300. And if you were lucky enough to be one of the 500 people to land the secret rare comic book, in that case, that comic book currently goes for $36,000 in the marketplace. Absolutely insane. I don't even know the percentage of returns that is. Now look into collectibles. At the time of recording this video, we tend to see collectibles drop on Saturdays or Sundays. It's kind of been this as a pattern, but if you're looking at this video a year, a couple months from now even, that could have changed and we could see 20-30 drops a week, which would be ridiculous. Can't imagine that now, but I wouldn't be surprised. Now let's take a deeper dive into each category, and I'll tell you what I'm kind of focused on at the end of the video. So for collectibles, I would say one of the biggest things that I see appealing to most people is going to be the use case in the metaverse. We have 3D AR collectibles that are not like any other NFTs on the market. When you see an NFT, you notice it to be flat 2D, it's on OpenSea, and it sits on your phone, you showcase on your phone, whereas Ecomi and VeVe have taken it a step further to bring it into the real world with augmented reality. And when we integrate VR and mixed reality glasses into the future, that's going to be a really cool mixture, and I think that the AR piece is going to be amazing. My next point for collectibles is going to be for gamification. We have some of these characters that have traits that look like they're about to move or spring right off of the page. Take for example the Marvel Mighties. The Marvel Mighties were actually created specifically for the VeVe app. You can't actually find a toy figurine of the Marvel Mighties anywhere in the world. You can only find that particular pose of Steve Rogers, Sam Wilson, or Bucky Barnes only inside the VeVe app, which is really cool, and it leads me to believe that there's potential for some kind of gamification. And I believe this would be a huge driving factor for the Marvel Mighties, as gamification could lead to something that earns you some kind of income, that gives you gems, that gives you points for the Master Collector program, and the possibilities are endless. When it comes to gamification and the metaverse, we already know that renting collectibles is going to be a thing. So I believe most people are going to want to rent collectibles over comics, as I believe collectibles will lead to unlocking certain zones in the metaverse. It'll allow you to enter clubs, it'll allow you to do certain things that you wouldn't be able to do if you didn't have that collectible. And seeing as there's a finite amount of collectibles out there, not everyone is going to be lucky enough to actually own one. With that being said, I see renting being a huge opportunity when it comes to owning a collectible. My next point for collectibles is going to be the interactivity. And what I mean by that is kids. So if you're going to show this app to a kid and you show them a comic on the screen that they have to read, odds are they're going to pick the collectible that they can pose in the room with, that they can pose with their pets, that they can put next to a tree, they can put into an action pose, they can mix it in the showroom and change it up a bit. And kids these days are familiar with certain things like this. Like when it comes to Fortnite, they're already doing this in game. They're doing this with Roblox and building worlds. So that transition to AR and moving a collectible around and making it move in certain ways or posing it in different ways isn't so foreign to them. And so it's going to be a seamless experience transitioning over from games to the AR world. And that leads me to another point, the showroom. The showroom has been a really fun experience for me. Personally, I've had a chance to make a couple of showrooms. There's a Twitter group called Vaultaholics where they judge certain vaults. So people create showrooms, and I got to enter mine into a Halloween monster mash where you got to mix up certain characters that you would never see in any other world mixed together and to create the scariest monster. It was a really cool experience. They did a live stream around it. They announced some winners. It was just a lot of fun, and it was a great community event. And so I think the showroom and building your own house in the metaverse is going to be a huge key point with your collectibles. This next one I think is going to appeal a little more to collectors, as personally as a collector, I find it appealing, is going to be sets. So right now, if you collect 5 different comics from that particular line, so for like a common, an uncommon, rare, ultra rare, and a secret rare, that doesn't actually complete a set for comics, but when it comes to collectibles, it does, which plays a role into that flexing piece. And I believe that that flexing piece, I know a lot of people may say it's silly, but I consider it kind of like having a blue check mark on Twitter. So people will try to vie their way to the top to be in the top 5% or the 10% or the 4% of the master collector program, and they're going to want to hold on to sets because you can lose your positioning if someone else comes up and beats you in that. And they've already said that this is a type of gamification that's coming to the VeVeverse. I'm hoping that, like in Ready Player One, we'll have a floating scoreboard in the middle of the VeVeverse that we can see who ranks up and who ranks down, and I think it'll just be a lot of fun, people trying to scramble to try to get collectibles. Now let's talk about comics. You can't deny that comics have been collected for decades. And for me, I believe comics are super valuable inside of the app, as these are the first ever comics that officially licensed by Marvel that we're going to see on the blockchain ever. We are really lucky right now to even see some of these available in the shop, as I believe even with 40, 50, 60,000 editions, that's not going to be enough for when we get 10, 20, 30 million users inside of the app. That's just a drop in the bucket. So if you have the opportunity to pick up any comics, I believe that this is going to be your best opportunity. So my first reasoning for why I believe comics are a good investment is because they have a proof of success. And so I talked about this in my last video, where you want to look at the history of something before you invest into it and seeing if it had its proof of success. This is a little bit different as it's an object as opposed to a person. But if you look at a comic book in real life and you look at grades and how much they went for in the past, you can actually see historical sales data. So if you look at the Marvel #1 comic book, I believe there's only about 12 in the world right now that you can get, and they're so scarce that they don't even pop up in the market. Even if you had the money, you would have to find and track down the person that is willing to sell that comic to you. And I believe the last one that sold in the millions, and it's not even in that great of condition. Just the scarcity alone and the fact that this is the first ever Marvel comic, the Marvel comic that spawned off an entire iconic line of movies that this generation will remember for years to come, is going to go down as one of the biggest pieces in history ever. And so with that comic still being available in the marketplace, although being $300 a comic right now, I believe it is still a great pickup. And that leads me to my next point, where there's so many comic book enthusiasts already. Whereas collectibles have yet to be proven, as it is a new concept with AR collectibles, comics have been here for decades, and you have hardcore, die-hard collectors. There's a couple of collectors in the community I'd love to shout out. So the first person I want to reference from the comic book community is Comics and Crypto. He does such a great job providing information on market cap for comic books. He does videos talking about the scarcity of the comics in real life. He talks about grading. He talks about what the value could be. And he just does a really good job of breaking it all down when it comes to comic books. Most recently, he was at a Comic-Con, and I believe he got his secret rare Deadpool signed, which is really cool. And I'm so excited for a native signing to come to comic books. The next person I wanted to reference when it comes to the comic book world is going to be Sleepin' Comics. He does a really good job of breaking down comic books as well. Both of these guys are die-hard comic book fans, and when it comes to comic books, they're going to be your best resource. So make sure to check out their channels. I'll link them in the description below. Leading into my next topic for why I believe comics will be valuable down the road is going to be the fact that they are readable and interactive. If you know any real life comic book collectors, odds are they're going to have their comic book kind of sealed like this if it's a really rare comic book. So this is not the actual Amazing Spider-Man 15, Amazing Fantasy Spider-Man 15, the first appearance, but it is a reprint from 1982. And I picked this up because I think it looks cool. The artwork is a representation of that first piece. Most comic book collectors, they're not going to want to crack open their grading case in order to read the comic book. They're going to want to have a digital version they can read without damaging this one, as both continue to rise in value. We have the ability to go in and actually read the comic and look back at it and share it with people around them. I think that's going to be a really cool experience, with VeVe putting in the tilt feature inside of the app as well, so that you can tilt your comic book towards you while you're lying in bed. It's just those little details that make the experience so much better. And my last thing for comics is there's going to already be diehard fans. You have fans that are lining up for hours at Comic-Con and certain events just to line up to meet the artists that wrote their comic book, just to get it signed. And when it comes to the digital NFT version of them being so scarce, although it feels like there's a lot now, when they get super scarce, these comic book collectors are going to come after them like the holy grails that we've seen on Pawn Stars, selling for $30, $40, $50, $60,000. And now it's not just the one-off comic going for $1 million. You're starting to see some of these older comics going for hundreds of thousands of dollars, because these collectors realize how scarce they are, and people are starting to discover this. And comic books, I believe, are coming back in a big way. We have channels going out and hunting certain comic books that they see in the VeVe app. And I believe the VeVe app has really helped the comic book community start to blow up again in a big way. So when it comes down to the conversation of comic books or collectibles, I would say if you can get any of the comics or collectibles at retail, it's going to be a win. We see with these comic books and with these collectibles, regardless of the rarity, they go for more in the aftermarket than they do at retail anyways. So if you're lucky enough to land a drop, I would say participate in all the drops. But my strategy really has been trying to collect sets. And for me personally, when it comes to that, just seeing that number go up just does something for me. It makes me excited. It gets me like, yes, I'm up another set. When it comes to collectibles, I just like the physical AR features of it. I've never really been a big comic book guy, but most recently I've gotten a chance to talk to Cryptos and Comic and Sleeping Comics and people like Johnny Dunn, and they really got me interested in comic books. And so I'm dabbling here and there, and I'm trying to pick up some nice mints or some nice comic book covers that I personally like. And for me, that's going to be a little bit more of the fun side, and if those comic books go up, then awesome. At the end of the day, for me, I like focusing my attention on the unknown, which is the collectibles, as I see them having a huge role in the metaverse, and that's the part that really sells it for me. And I would say at the end of the day, regardless of whatever you collect, you're bound to make a profit in this app. So if you guys like what you saw today, please like, subscribe. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.